I'm having a midlife crisis. Just let it be, okay? But I did see 2 movies this weekend, and I want to talk about them. The first movie that I'm going to be reviewing is Working Man. This is by director David Ayer. He also directed The Beekeeper, End of Watch, and Fury, which is surprising because I loved End of Watch and Fury in particular. So you can expect that this movie is basically a copy and paste of Beekeeper with a couple of, changes here and there to hide the plagiarism. Of course, this is starring Jason Statham, and Jason Statham is, of course, invulnerable in this movie. Construction site, and basically he made friends with the owner of the construction site, treats him like family. But, of course, Russia is involved in some way, and they decide to kidnap his boss's daughter, saving her from, the evil bad men. And yeah, just expect Jason Statham to do Jason Statham things. The old cliches of him walking away while there's something exploding in the background. Him having every single weapon at his disposal, and of course he's able to take down a group of men all by himself. Just expect that cliche. And of course he has a former military friend that hooks him up with every military weapon known to man, like every other military person ever has, like myself. Jason Statham is doing Jason Statham things. Yeah, the old cliches of, he is not just one man, he is different. You're gonna get a lot of those cliches in this movie, I'm not gonna lie. The action was pretty cool in this movie. There's a lot of practical effects, which, I always appreciate. But, it's like watching Mission Impossible. Are we really expecting anything different this time? I ever watched Jason Statham than Tom Cruise just because Jason Statham, just look at him. Can you blame me? Old cliches aside, Jason Statham acts like Jason Statham, looking all menacingly in the camera. And, don't get me wrong, I loved him in the movie The Transporter, but that man cannot act to save his life, which is fine. That makes him an action star. I don't hate him for that. It's just, this is the same old thing we've seen a bazillion times. Don't expect anything different. Only thing that I will say that annoyed me in this movie was the fact that it is almost 2 hours long. This movie needs to be 30 minutes short. Because I'm saying, if you're gonna make an old action cliche, at least have the consideration that audiences don't have the time to spend in a movie that basically leads to nothing and nowhere. No offense to the director, with an action star that, yeah, sure, he's likable, but Jesus Christ, other than that, guys, I'm not really a big fan of this movie. Like I said, I don't really recommend you spend the time in the theaters to go watch it. I would much rather just wait for it to come out on Netflix or HBO Max, watch it then, and I'm gonna be giving this movie a 4 out of 10. Thank you. Another movie that I saw this weekend was The Woman in the Yard. This was directed by Jaume Collet Serra, who also directed, which is crazy, Carry On, Jungle Cruise, Orphan, and House of Wax, which I'm not gonna lie though, House of Wax and Orphan, I didn't particularly hate. They're not the greatest movies in the world, but I didn't really hate on these movies. However, Carry On and Jungle Cruise, this is starring Danielle Deadwyler, Estella Kahija, and Peyton Jackson. Overall, guys, I'm gonna start with the negatives because there are a couple negatives in this movie. This story is incredibly predictable. Very slow pace, and it loses my interest 30 minutes in. Another thing was that the editing was incredibly choppy in the middle of the movie, almost so much so that it actually took me out of the movie a little bit because it was just too much. There was I got kind of lost as to what is going on. And I'm not gonna get into well, you know what? I'm just gonna put spoilers. So spoiler if you ending was bleak and dark, which I appreciate, but it did not hit. It did not stick its landing. Mostly for me, at least, there was a disconnect between the main character and the audience, myself. Because if you're gonna write a character that does what the character supposedly does in the ending, you have to move mountains in order to justify it. And even then, a lot of people really push against that kind of message for obvious reasons. No real connection with me and this character. Yeah, she was going through something horrible. I could not imagine going through something like that. And the actress did a fantastic job at portraying some of her grief. However, we didn't spend long enough time to really see how this is affecting her. At least, like, you know, I want to see the grief. I want to see her struggling to find a purpose in her daily life, losing interest in small things, you know. But unfortunately, in this movie, they showed way too much her being honestly quite horrible to her kids. What does that do? It makes me automatically not like her. And that's what ended up happening, is that I ended up not liking her in Act 2. So when Act 3 happened, it was like, I just don't care. This movie has a very interesting message. You gotta be careful with that, because you don't want to pull a 13 Reasons Why, and if you don't know what I mean, oh man, just Google 13 Reasons Why controversy. It'll pop up real quick. Worked if I connected more with her pain, her daily struggle. Something other than her just being a perra to her kids for some reason. I understand that she's grieving, but you have to make her somewhat likable. Like, I feel sorry for her grief, but I'm not gonna root for someone that is honestly being quite horrible to her children that had nothing to do with the situation that they're in. I'm not gonna lie though, the cinematography in this movie was pretty cool. I did enjoy the cinematography. However, the music was lackluster. The jump scares were not really jump scares. They were just, boo, you know, like startling. It's like, I'm not scared. I'm just getting startled. And you know how annoying that is every time I go to a horror movie? The ending overall felt rushed. It felt confusing. Multiverse of horror madness with a very unsatisfying ending. It's just a typical Blumhouse film. I don't recommend. Definitely don't go to the theater to watch this movie. Save your money. Wait for it to come out on Netflix. Don't recommend. And I'm gonna be giving this movie a 4 out of 10. Thank you. That's my review. I'll see you all for the next one. Bye.